Howdy everybody, Dr. Andy Woods here. This is Pastor's Point of View number 349. Today is April the 11th. This is being released April the 11th, 2025. We have a prophecy update for you on Pastor's Point of View. Today, notice our preview slide looking at two major issues. The first is the Restrainer. More good news concerning the Trump administration. But we'll say a couple words about that and move very quickly to number two and spend most of our time there, how the stage is being set for the Gog-Magog invasion. And that's predicted in Ezekiel 38 and 39. And really I want to drill down today on the Islamization of the United States of America in general, and the state of Texas in particular. And I think this is one of the things that will sideline the United States, where she will not be a factor to come to Israel's defense when the invasion of Ezekiel 38 and 39 transpires, spearheaded by Iran, Russia, and Turkey. More on that a little bit later. But first of all, some good news. Before the end time scenario takes place, God's word is very clear that there will be something in the world called the Restrainer. The Restrainer will continue to hold back the forces of Antichrist right up till the eve of the rapture. And notice this particular passage that talks about it. Paul writes in 2 Thessalonians 2, verses 6 and 7, and you know what restrains him now, Antichrist in other words, restraining Antichrist, so that in his time he will be revealed. For the mystery of lawlessness is already at work. Only he who now restrains will do so until he is taken out of the way. Before you have the man of lawlessness coming, there's going to be something in the world called the mystery of lawlessness already at work, which is basically stage setting for the man of lawlessness. But the man of lawlessness can't come forward until the restrainer is removed. So this is a part of Bible prophecy that a lot of Bible prophecy enthusiasts don't place enough emphasis on, in my humble opinion. Most of their scripts are the world's going from bad to worse, which to a large extent is true, but it can't get as bad as it will get as long as the Restrainer, the Holy Spirit, is doing his work. The Holy Spirit uses different agents to restrain evil. One of them, I believe, is the institution of human government. Notice what Romans 13, verses 3 through 5 says. It says, for rulers are not a cause of fear for good behavior, but for evil. Do you want to have no fear of authority? Do what is good, and you will have praise from the same. For it, or government, is a minister of God to you for good. But if you do what is evil, be afraid, for it does not bear the sword for nothing, for it is a minister of God, an avenger who brings wrath on the one who practices evil. Now, we all know that human governments can be tyrannical and abusive, but there's also governments that are doing a great job holding back the spirit of Antichrist and the New World Order. That is how I largely look at what has happened in the United States and the world since Donald Trump took office on Inauguration Day. I believe it was January 20th, early on this year. There are incredible things that have been done, in my humble opinion, to hold back the forces of evil. In other words, things could be a lot worse if Donald Trump was not in the White House. And one of the things that he has done is he has criticized the ICC, otherwise known as the International Criminal Court. And because he has criticized the International Criminal Court and vowed once again that the United States will not be a signatory to the International Criminal Court, other countries are now doing the same. Now you have to understand what the International Criminal Court is. It's the legal arm of the New World Order. It's a rogue court that has jurisdiction over planet Earth, and it allows itself the power to prosecute criminals for very vague, ambiguous statutes, environmental infractions, crimes against human rights. What exactly do those mean? And it gives this court really almost unlimited power. And its power to do good in one instance, in my opinion, also gives it the power to do evil in other instances, because you don't have in the International Criminal Court a lot of the safeguards, legal safeguards that are built into our system, such as the prosecution having to prove its case beyond a reasonable doubt, such as the right to a speedy trial. You could be jailed and tried much later under the International Criminal Court, such as freedom from self-incrimination, the right to confront your accusers, protection from double jeopardy. If the International Criminal Court loses a case against you, it just keeps prosecuting until it can win. And so a lot of the legal safeguards that we're used to here in the United States, to a large extent, don't exist in the International Criminal Court. And so you've got a court that has very few limitations on it, allowed to prosecute laws that it can define any way it wants to define them, and it has universal jurisdiction over the entire earth. So I've been watching the International Criminal Court for a number of years, and I've long believed that it will be the legal arm of the coming New World Order under the Antichrist. In fact, the International Criminal Court just a few months back, I believe it was, issued an arrest warrant for Bibi Netanyahu based on how he is prosecuting the war in Gaza post October 7th of 2023. And so if Bibi Netanyahu steps foot in basically 122 nations of the earth, he can be put under arrest for how he's transacting or conducting the war in Gaza. Not the international community not wanting him to go into Gaza to root out Hamas out of Gaza, which is a common sense thing. The International Criminal Court and international law supposedly says he can't do that. So this is the power of this International Criminal Court. So I'm very heartened by Trump's criticisms of the International Criminal Court. And what is starting to happen around the world is, as Trump is criticizing this International Criminal Court, the ICC, other signatory nations around the world, the United States is, as we speak, is not a signatory to the Rome Statute, which empowers this International Criminal Court, but a lot of other countries around the world are suddenly gaining a spine. They're gaining a backbone. And they're also criticizing the International Criminal Court, and they're desiring to pull out of the International Criminal Court. This is what I would call the Trump effect. So to kind of help us with that, notice this particular article here from apnews.com, April 3rd, 2025. It says, Hungary will begin the process from withdrawing from the International Criminal Court, an official said Thursday. Just as Prime Minister Bibi Netanyahu arrived to red carpet treatment in the country's capital despite an arrest warrant from the world's only permanent global tribunal for war crimes and genocide. The article says that invitation was in open defiance of the court's ruling and contradicted Hungary's obligations as a signatory to arrest any suspects facing a warrant if they set foot on their soil. The article says, at a news conference following the meeting, Orban, the leader of Hungary, said that he believes the ICC is, quote, no longer an impartial court, no longer a court of law, but a political court. And this was most clearly shown by the decisions concerning Israel. I am convinced that this otherwise important international judicial forum has been degraded into a political tool with which we cannot and do not want to engage, Orban said. So here is Netanyahu that wants to, come and visit Hungary, a diplomatic effort. And because Hungary is a signatory to the International Criminal Court, Hungary now is obligated to arrest Bibi Netanyahu once he steps foot on the soil of Hungary. So suddenly the leadership of Hungary gains a spine, gains a backbone, finds their sea legs and says, you know what, we're not going to put up with this anymore. We're going to withdraw. We're going to start the process now of withdrawing from the International Criminal Court, because they see the International Criminal Court for what it is. It's not a real judicial legal court. It's a court that exists to enforce different political, ideological brands. It's an anti-Israel court. It has anti-Israel sentiments. And so I see this kind of thing happening in the world as the Trump effect, restraining evil. It's an example where globalism, one worldism, which is going to come one day, is being held at bay. And so I bring that to your attention. We have a related screenshot of an article, if we can put that up real quick. It says, the court recalls that Hungary remains under a duty to cooperate with the ICC. So the International Criminal Court spokesperson articulated that and is telling Hungary, be careful, watch your steps, because those are going to become missteps and they're going to become anti-ICC. And so, of course, as Hungary is trying to pull out of this court, the International Criminal Court is trying to keep Hungary in the International Criminal Court. But at any rate, the International Criminal Court is going to do what it's going to do one day. It will be the legal arm, I believe, of the New World Order. But right now, it's being held at bay. That's the work of the Restrainer, largely using the Trump administration to accomplish this agenda. Speaking of the Trump effect, notice this screenshot. It says breaking news. It says kneeling. The University of Texas withdraws scholarship from all students who kneel during the national anthem. And of course, this is the big thing amongst the CRT crowd, the critical race theorists. When the national anthem is played in public events, they don't want to, stand, salute the flag, put their hand over their heart, sing the national anthem. They want to take the knee because they believe, according to critical race theory, that America is an oppressive empire. So it's very common in major athletics today for this kind of thing to happen. I remember when Patrick Ewing was the coach of the Georgetown Hoyas basketball team in one of their NCAA appearances a couple of years back. As the national anthem is being played, you can see the entire team not standing for the national anthem and taking the knee. That's their way of symbolically saying that the United States is an oppressive country, which, of course, the United States is not an oppressive country. The world is trying to beat down our doors to get here. I mean, you don't do that with a genocidal, oppressive country. This country has given more freedom economically and politically to more people than any other country in the face of mankind in all of human history, in other words. But these critical race theorists want you to believe that America is some kind of oppressive power. And so here comes the Trump administration drawing up money for schools that want to engage in this kind of thing. And now you have this good news breaking forth in Texas, where the University of Texas, this is a Trump effect, says if you want to do that kind of thing, if you want to kneel during the national anthem, then no scholarship money for you. So this is a wonderful thing that's happened. It's a patriotic thing that's happened. It's a pro-nation state thing that's happened. It's an anti-globalist thing that's happened. And so the Restrainer is alive and well. Now, of course, as these kinds of things are happening, what is taking place is unelected judges, particularly judges at the lowest court level in the federal system, are trying to place handcuffs on the Trump administration for its role in functioning as the restrainer. And so the Trump administration tries to move in a particular direction, and here comes some lower federal court judge telling the Trump administration it can't. Remember what Chuck Schumer said? Chuck Schumer said, I think on NPR, and we covered this, I think on one of our prior shows, I think it was the last one, or perhaps the one before. He said we have 235, and this is his language, progressive judges in place to stop Trump. So, in other words, all of these judges have been appointed under the previous administration, the Biden regime, as I call it, and they are all in place trying to put handcuffs on a lot of the good things that the Trump administration is doing. Here is one such example. We have a screenshot of this, and the person that created this meme said, did you know that the D.C. judge who forced the Trump administration to temporarily restore funding for foreign aid, his name is Amir, I think it's Hatem, if I'm pronouncing that right, Mahdi Ali, last name Ali, only became a United States citizen in 2019 and holds dual citizenship with Canada. And it says Judge Ali was appointed by Biden November the 22nd, 2024, immediately after the 2024 election. And notice what this screenshot brings out. He is the first Muslim federal judge. So these are the kinds of people that the Trump administration is up against, people that are new to the country, dual citizenship, freshly appointed, and in this case the individual happens to be an adherent to Islam, which we're going to spend a lot of time talking about in just a minute. So this is the kind of battle that's now taking place in the United States of America. Fortunately, as we're continuing here with this theme related to ending or continuing with this theme of the restrainer, fortunately there's been a key Supreme Court decision that has just been handed down. Notice this particular screenshot here. It says, breaking, the Supreme Court rules Trump has authority to use the Alien Enemies Act against Venezuelan illegals. And it says here, Judge Boasberg's order is void. So that is a brand new Supreme Court decision that has just come down, and I celebrate it. This will be a big help to the Trump administration because as the Trump administration is seeking to take members of international terrorist gangs and remove them from our country, all of a sudden this district court Judge Boasberg says the Trump administration can't do that, in spite of the fact that the Trump administration has every right and in fact a duty to do that under the Alien Enemies Act. So Boasberg says we're going to put, as a district judge, the lowest level in the federal system. And keep in mind that these district court judges and the appellate level circuit court judges aren't even mentioned in the United States Constitution. They only exist by the good graces of Congress. We've talked a little bit about that on prior shows. Take a look at Article 3, Sections 1 and 2 sometime of the United States Constitution, and you'll see that these types of lower level judges exist because Congress put them into existence. So here's a guy at the lowest level of the federal system. Here's a guy whose very court is not even mentioned in the United States Constitution. And here's a guy whose wife and family are putting into his lap a conflict of interest because decisions made with Doge and USAID and all of these different groups are hurting his family because a lot of them are employed related to USAID and those kinds of things. So the guy is grossly conflicted. He should have recused himself and not been involved in this decision-making process. And by the way, I think this guy at this particular district court got 4 cases that deal with the Trump administration. I mean, how does the same guy keep getting cases where he can rule against the Trump administration? But anyway, this guy is a real problem, and these district courts have become a real problem for reasons I've tried to explain. And so here is a great Supreme Court ruling saying, you know what, district court, you got no power to stop the executive branch from doing what it has a right and a duty to do under its executive powers and under the Alien Enemies Act to remove those that are adherents to international terrorist organizations from American soil. And so what the Supreme Court just did is it just took the handcuffs off the Trump administration to a very large extent. And so this is the kind of thing that we need to see more of. This particular Supreme Court decision was very narrow. It was a 5-4 decision. And guess who voted with the dissent? Notice this particular picture of Amy Coney Barrett. And the person on X that put up this picture said this: tonight, the U.S. Supreme Court vacated Judge Boasberg's block on Trump using the Alien Enemies Act to deport criminal aliens. The decision was 5-4. And then it says this: guess who voted with the 3 liberals? And there's a picture there of Amy Coney Barrett, one of the members of the United States Supreme Court. I bring her to your attention just to highlight and accentuate the fact that from the constitutional conservative side of things, she has been a huge disappointment. Everybody thought she was going to go onto the bench and be a constitutional conservative, and she has not done that. She has voted routinely against the Trump administration. In fact, when Trump gave his inauguration, well, it wasn't inauguration, it was a joint session speech that he gave, the State of the Union speech, maybe, I don't know, a few weeks ago. There's actually footage of Trump coming in to Congress, and the Supreme Court is seated there. And you can see Amy Coney Barrett's body language, how she kind of recoils, turns away from Trump when he comes near to her to shake the various hands of the Supreme Court justices. So I'm not sure what's going on with her. All I have to say is she's been a huge disappointment. She was expected to be a strong voice for the Constitution, which she has not been. But the good news is she was not able to derail this decision, as handcuffs have now been taken off the Trump administration, allowing them to continue to do many of the good things that they are doing, such as deport international terrorist members, from our country. So there are a lot of good things happening where the Restrainer is at work seeking to hold back the forces of Antichrist and the New World Order. So I just wanted to bring you up to speed on some of that. Let's go now to our second major issue that we want to try to tackle in this particular session, and that's the Gog-Magog issue. There's a invasion that's coming. Ezekiel 38 and 39 describes it. It's going to be spearheaded by Iran, Turkey, and Russia into the land of Israel. It's predicted in Ezekiel 38 and 39, a prophecy given to Ezekiel 2,600 years ago. As we've explained many times on this broadcast, it has those prophecies there have a few strange names associated with them, like Sheba and Dedan, Persia. We believe that Sheba and Dedan is Saudi Arabia, and we believe that Persia is Iran. And if you want the documentation on that, I recommend the little book I wrote entitled The Middle East Meltdown, since I don't have the time to give you the documentation and how we know those ancient names represent modern countries in this particular broadcast. But there's a source that you could go to get that documentation. We portray typically this invasion through this map, and this map here describes the major players that will invade the nation of Israel in the last days, Ezekiel 38 and 39. And when you look at a map like this, you ask one question: where is the United States of America? I mean, isn't the United States of America a longtime ally of Israel? Certainly the United States of America would step in and do something to stop or thwart or slow down this invasion. And so that's one of the great questions in the area of Bible prophecy. You know, the question is, we don't have any clear reference in Bible prophecy in any futuristic prophetic passage to the United States of America. So what happened to the United States of America? And there's different theories that are proposed. Some people think America will be decimated by the pre-tribulational rapture of the church. That will weaken the nation. But I want to share with you another possibility. I think it's possible that the United States of America, prior to this invasion, becomes Islamicized. Maybe a full-blown Islamic theocracy does not, replace the United States of America, but the United States of America sort of becomes influenced or friendly to Islam. And as America becomes friendly or influenced to Islam, what will disappear very quickly is America's pro-Israel support, because Islam is anti-Israel. Islam essentially believes that the Temple Mount area in Jerusalem is where Muhammad ascended back to heaven, descended back to Allah, I should say, on a steed named Barak. And so to Islam, Jerusalem is their holy site. In their thinking, Jerusalem is the third holiest site in Islam. And so they believe that essentially Israel and Jerusalem belongs to them on religious grounds. And consequently, Israel's presence there in that land is an affront, is an insult to Allah himself. So if that thinking represents Islam, and as Islam starts to influence more and more the United States of America, it stands to reason that America will lose her pro-Israel edge. And maybe that's the reason why America doesn't come to Israel's defense in the upcoming futuristic Gog and Magog invasion. So the truth of the matter is there are areas in our country that are being Islamicized. And as they are being Islamicized, Islam is growing in terms of influence in the United States of America. Now, some of these we've covered, and many of them deal with the state of Texas. I believe that the state of Texas is being targeted intentionally because in the Islamic mind, if you can flip red Texas into the blue column and you can Islamicize Texas, then you can Islamicize any state in the Union, because Texas is kind of looked at as the red, conservative, Christian stronghold. So in prior shows, we've talked about areas of Texas that are being Islamicized as I speak. We have a picture here of what's called EPIC, E-P-I-C. That's a diagram of what it's going to look like according to Islamic sources. This stands for the East Plano Islamic Center. Plano is an area that is very close to the city of Dallas, sort of in that Dallas metroplex area. And this is essentially an Islamic enclave that is being built, Sharia compliant. Islamic schools are included so that Islamic children can be insulated completely and totally from Western influence. And so what this represents is a group of people that really have no ambition whatsoever to integrate into American society. They want to build a parallel society within the borders of the United States of America. They even want their own judicial system. In fact, they tried to push that through, I believe, a few years back in the Plano, Frisco area, and the mayor at the time, Beth Van Dyne, I think is her name. She's, I believe, now in the Congress. She said, no, you can't have your own Islamic judicial system because this is the United States of America. But this is the kind of effort that's being put forward by Islam in the United States of America in an attempt for Islam to gain greater influence over a Western-style country like the United States of America. Here's another picture of something called the DMCC. This stands for the Dallas Muslim Community Center. So here's another community center that is being constructed according to this particular artist's rendition of it, also in the Dallas area. In prior shows, we've dealt with Pflugerville, Texas, another Islamic enclave stronghold, where even Main Street the name Main Street is being changed to the Palestinian Way. Let me give you some other areas. Blue Ridge, Texas, where this kind of thing is happening. And then we also talked about it in Paterson, New Jersey, where we've shown you photographs. We don't have those with us today, but we've shown you photographs of police officers in Paterson, New Jersey, wearing on their uniforms the so-called Palestinian flag. So with all of that being said, and oh, by the way, let's put this shot up here. This says Troy Hills Alert. This is the kind of thing that's starting to become very, very typical in the United States. It says here the particular board of this particular city was having an adjustment hearing at their local high school, and it talks here about a 4-story high-rise, high-density 29-unit apartment building, and it says right there on this sign, proposed behind the Islamic mosque. So you notice how Islamic mosques are sort of being used as, I guess I would call them key markers, as decisions are being made in the city councils around our nation concerning if something can be built, where it can be built, etc. So with all of that being said, I want to take you now to something that's very personal. It deals with the city that I have been privileged to live in since 2010, and that's the city of Sugar Land. And I want to draw your attention to this article by the rarefoundation.com. It's dated April the 7th, 2025. The author is Amy Meek, if I'm pronouncing her name right, M-E-K. And she has done just yeoman's work exposing Muslim integration into these cities. See, they don't want to integrate with American culture. They don't want to assimilate with American culture. What they want to do is take over key cities in the United States, big and small, and claim them for Allah. And that's what she's bringing out in this article. And it deals with the city that I live in. And this is something that just happened, I believe, back on April 7th, Monday of this week. And it deals with the city of Sugar Land. And it says this: thousands of Houston area Muslims gathered at the Sugar Land town square for a controversial open-air iftar organized by someone named Siddiqui, a blacklisted Pakistani Islamic propagandist, transforming a Texas civic plaza into a stage for religious supremacy and ideological conquest. Sugar Land, Texas, a once sleepy American suburb steeped in family values and traditional civic life, is being rapidly transformed. This past Saturday, its heart, Town Square, became the stage for a jarring public display of Islamic religious and political power. Thousands of Muslims gathered, not in a mosque, but directly in front of the Sugar Land City Hall for the first ever open-air iftar in the region. The event, which was organized by a controversial Pakistani national based in Houston, Siddiqui, marked far more than the end of a daily Ramadan. It marked a territorial and ideological milestone for Texas. The Islamic call to prayer, or adhan, rang out over a loudspeaker across the square. Streets fell silent. Children stopped playing. Muslims dropped to their knees. A giant screen prominently displayed a live broadcast in Mecca, the holiest site in Islam, where non-Muslims are legally banned from entering, let alone witnessing, religious rites. This was not a meal. This was a declaration. And even the food made that clear. Thousands of boxed dinners were handed out to attendees, each one strictly halal, prepared in accordance with Sharia, or Islamic law. Local restaurants like the Pakistani Halal, Kahari Boys, and La Pasha Lounge, both proudly adherents to Islamic slaughter regulations, catered the event. So this is the kind of thing that's now happening in my city, the city of Sugar Land. The article goes on and it says, organizers build the event as a message of unity and togetherness. But for those familiar with Islamic doctrine, the message was clear and unapologetic. Islam is here not to coexist, but to dominate. The adhan itself is not a neutral religious chant. It is a theological and political statement. This is a lengthy article, so obviously I can't read the whole thing here, but I would encourage you to get this and download it and read it. The article goes on and says, while the crowd in Sugar Land knelt for prayer and the loudspeakers blasted the adhan across town square, few paused to ask the most basic question: who organized this event? Rehan Siddiqui, a Pakistani-born media mogul based in Houston, is no innocent event promoter. He owns and operates several South Asian radio stations, they're named here, and more, targeting immigrant communities across Texas. And the article talks about what kind of person this is that organized this event. It says his political alignment is unmistakable. Pro-Pakistan, anti-Hindu, anti-India, and now aggressively exported into American civic life, Through concerts, radio shows, and so-called community events, Siddiqui is said to promote the same ideological narratives used by Pakistan's intelligence agencies to destabilize India. The fact that this propaganda is now being broadcast across Texas under the guise of a multicultural celebration should alarm every American who values truth, sovereignty, and freedom. And yet, despite these red flags, he was granted the public square in Sugar Land, a peaceful Christian-rooted community, to publicly broadcast a supremacist religious ritual, the Adhan, declaring Allah's dominion over all. This was not cultural coexistence. This was a symbolic conquest spearheaded by a man who has championed ideologies hostile to Hindus, hostile to India, and deeply incompatible with Western civic values. You know, one of the great questions that's raised in this article is why in the world would the Sugar Land City Council approve this kind of event? I mean, certainly if I traveled to an Islamic country and tried an event of this magnitude on the Christian side, it would have been stopped very quickly. I probably would be incarcerated very quickly, if not executed. But here is the state of Texas in general, and the city of Sugar Land in particular, just opening the door wide open to this kind of event, to a group of people in the Islamic faith that have no ambition to assimilate into American society, but rather desire to conquer it. How do we know that? Because that's what Sharia law calls for. The article says, under Sharia, a Muslim man's life is worth more than a woman's life. A Muslim's life is worth more than a non-Muslim. Dhimmis, who are non-Muslims, must pay a tax called the jizya just to exist. Religious minorities are barred from building new houses of worship. Non-Muslims cannot hold office, own weapons. By the way, that violates the Second Amendment and the First Amendment for that matter. Under Sharia law, non-Muslims cannot hold office, own weapons, or publicly express their faith. The author says this isn't integration, it's colonization. Sugar Land was a test, a soft conquest cloaked in smiles and iftar dinners, a charm offensive. Next year it may be your town square, your city, your children's curriculum, your legal system. What happens next depends on whether this state, this country has the courage to stop it. While residents celebrated Easter and prepared for Passover, the Sugar Land City Council ceded your civic space to a blacklisted Pakistani propagandist, allowed the supremacist Islamic Adhan to be broadcast over public property, and enabled a foreign-linked ideological event that openly declared that the supremacy of Islam over all others. The author says, ask yourself this question: Why was a man with alleged ties to Pakistani intelligence allowed to control a public square in Texas? Why were taxpayer-funded civic spaces used for religious dominance, not civic unity? Why was no alternative viewpoint allowed? And why are your elected officials silent? Every member of the Sugar Land City Council owes their voters an explanation. And if you go on to this article towards the end, it gives you the email addresses and the phone numbers of the various members of the Sugar Land City Council that okayed this. And I think they need to hear from us. I think they need to hear from the citizens of Sugar Land, and they need to hear from people around the country and around the world, quite frankly, that think this kind of thing is unacceptable. And so their phone numbers and their email addresses are all embedded in this article. And then the article concludes this way: if this event becomes an annual tradition, it will not be because Islam demanded it. It will be because you stayed silent while your leaders handed over your town square. So the rise of Islam everywhere in the United States of America, including my own doorstep, my own backyard, so to speak, Sugar Land, Texas. Notice this particular screenshot here. It says the Sugar Land Grand Iftar, and it says witness the azan echoing in Sugar Land Town Square for the first time, promoting this iftar dinner. And this was back March the 22nd, 2025. And if your eyes are good, you can see our town square. And I can't tell you how personal this is to me. I know that town square like the back of my hand. I go to that town square frequently. In fact, sort of to the left, if you can see it, backing up even beyond the picture, is a very special restaurant that my wife and I frequent, particularly when it's our anniversary or something of that nature. And it's just astounding to me how they can take that town square, put up this picture, put up this poster, and act like Islam has conquered this territory. And the Sugar Land City Council, just plays matador defense and lets these people do whatever they want under the guise of tolerance, when this is an ideological statement, as the article points out, that's being made by Islam, that we have conquered this city and we are in the process of conquering this state. And so I frequently wonder, is that the reason that America does not come to Israel's defense in the upcoming Gog-Magog invasion? Has the influence of Islam become so dominant in the United States of America that we lost our pro-Israel, pro-Zionist edge? So I have some videos that I want to play for you. In fact, we've kind of combined these into one video. The hat tip goes to this Rare Foundation Amy Meek article, because you can find these videos there, but it's a shot or a video taken as to what this particular event that I am describing that took place, I guess back Saturday of last week, what it looked like. So let's go ahead and roll that video at this time if we could.
At the Makkah, this is the first time in history of Sugar Land that we have live azan and live transmission directly from Mecca and Medina. Is that a beautiful feeling, ladies and gentlemen? Mecca on the background. Open air, Sugar Land Town Center. What a beautiful, it's such a beautiful feeling.
That's kind of a stunning shot, isn't it? Particularly when you frequent that area. And to see almost on that particular event an Islamic statement being made, an Islamic, takeover of that area. And what's happening there is going to happen at a city that you reside in, I think very, very soon, if this trend continues. One of the interesting things that you saw there is a live feed of what was going on in Saudi Arabia, where they travel to, I believe it's Mecca. They circle around, I think it's called the Kaaba, 7 times. And as that was happening live, this event in Sugar Land was being held simultaneously. And I'm not sure if it came out well on the video or not, but you can hear one of the organizers of the event essentially saying that we have united for the first time in history, as this event is happening in Saudi Arabia simultaneously with the event in Sugar Land. We have united through live feed for the very first time the city of Sugar Land with Saudi Arabia, with Mecca, and with Medina. That's what he's boasting about. And he's saying the technology of our time period gives us the ability to do this. This is not a sign of people that want to assimilate. This is a sign of conquest. Let's put up, if we could, Ezekiel 38 and verse 13. Let me give you another quick prophetic angle on this, if I could. Ezekiel 38 and verse 13 says this concerning the coming Gog-Magog invasion. Sheba and Dedan and the merchants of Tarshish with all of its villages will say, have you come to capture spoil? Have you assembled your company to seize plunder, to carry away silver and gold, and to take away cattle and goods, and to capture great spoil? We believe that Sheba and Dedan represent Saudi Arabia in this prophecy. Notice again our Gog-Magog map. It's got Saudi Arabia circled and emboldened. Essentially what happens when the Gog-Magog invasion transpires is Saudi Arabia seems to stage kind of a lame protest, but they do absolutely nothing to help the invaders. And so by this declaration that Saudi Arabia is now connected to Sugar Land, is now connected to America, is now connected to the state of Texas, now we're starting for the very first time to see perhaps an explanation as to why the United States of America does not intervene to stop the upcoming Gog-Magog invasion. They're following the pattern of Saudi Arabia. Why are they following the pattern of Saudi Arabia? Because you just saw a live shot where an individual essentially stood up and said, you know what? Because of this live feed and because of this technology, we have united Saudi Arabia, Mecca, and Medina with Sugar Land for the very first time. And so all of these things I think are significant because I think they're setting the stage for the upcoming Gog-Magog invasion and why America will largely be sidelined. She will be sidelined and won't intervene to help Israel because of the influence of Islam in the United States of America that's growing. And so I bring that to your attention on a prophecy update. Let me cover very quickly one more issue before we sign off here related to Gog-Magog. And you'll notice our map again, and here we have Persia, or Iran circled. We know that Persia or Iran will be one of the invaders in the upcoming Gog-Magog invasion. So if that's true, we would expect that Persia or Iran would develop into a regional power on the eve of this invasion and would become very bellicose and belligerent against the West and Israel on the eve of this invasion. And that's exactly what we see transpiring. You see, pre-1979, the stage was not set right for the fulfillment of that prophecy because Persia or Iran, under the Shah, was an ally of Israel. In fact, Iran recognized the newborn state of Israel when she became a nation again in 1948 and was an ally of the West. And isn't it interesting how everything shifted so suddenly in 1979 when the Shah was deposed and replaced by the Ayatollah, and Persia or Iran, I mean, I'm not speaking here of the Iranian Persian people. They're beautiful, wonderful people. What I'm speaking of is the regime that enslaves them and oppresses them. So it's interesting post-1979 that Iran became a Shiite theocracy under Islam and became anti-Western and anti-Israel in its worldview. And so that trend has only accelerated from 1979 right into recent days. So just to help us with the acceleration of that trend, let me direct you to this article from Fox News. Excuse me, this one actually comes from Yahoo, but I think Fox News picked it up as well. This is dated April the 5th, 2025, and it says this: state-controlled Iranian newspaper calls for firing bullets into President Donald Trump's empty skull. This is the kind of rhetoric that routinely now comes out of Persia or Iran. Exactly what Ezekiel said would happen. Persia would become anti-Western and anti-Israeli, and so this is their normal rhetoric. Keep in mind that Iran, 2 times last year, launched projectiles from Iran proper into the land of Israel. So they're no longer working exclusively through their proxies like Hezbollah and the Houthis, but the mask is off. They're revealing their anti-Israel intentions when they do things like this. And here are some of their public statements related to our president, President Donald Trump. This article says the Islamist revolutionary newspaper that is widely considered the voice of Iran's supreme leader, Khamenei, on Saturday stoked a targeted assassination of President Donald Trump. According to the Persian League, the article published in the Mouthpiece Kayhan, a newspaper of Khamenei, and here's the quote from the newspaper concerning Trump from Iran: "He's way out of line. Any day now in revenge for the blood of martyr Soleimani. A few bullets are going to be fired into the empty skull of his, and he'll be drinking from the chalice of accursed death," close quote. Trump ordered a drone strike in January 2020, which eliminated the U.S. global Iranian regime terrorist Soleimani. I think I mispronounced that a little earlier. Iran has repeatedly vowed revenge and assassinations targeting Trump and former officials from his administration. According to the Trump administration, Soleimani oversaw the murders of more than 600 American personnel. The Kayhan, that's this newspaper, their article comes days after Trump said he would launch bombing attacks against Iran's regime if they refuse to dismantle their atomic weapons program. Jason Brodsky, the policy director of United Against Nuclear Iran, otherwise known as UANI, told Fox News that the Kayhan has repeatedly threatened to assassinate President Trump for years. Kayhan's editor is a personal representative of Iran's supreme leader. The article goes on and it says, Iranian-born Israeli Sabti, an expert on Iran and a research fellow for the National Security Studies, says Iran's regime wants to unite the world against Trump and wants someone to shoot Trump, and they also want to bring the economic issue against him. The article says, Sabti said Khamenei, quote, wants to make the world angry against Trump and make propaganda against America, close quote. In November, Fox News Digital reported the Justice Department says it thwarted an Iranian plot to kill Trump in the weeks leading up to the election. A criminal complaint filed in federal court in New York says an unnamed official in Iran's Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps had asked Farhad Shakeri, 51, of Iran in September to, quote, focus on surveilling and ultimately assassinating the former President of the United States, Donald Trump. Khamenei has been described as being hell-bent on assassination of Trump since 2020, following the former president's order to kill Soleimani in Iraq. Fox News Digital reported that an Iranian-produced animated video depicting the targeted assassination of Trump by the Islamic Republic was uploaded to Khamenei's official website. Wow. Talk about dangerous people making dangerous threats through their state-controlled press. Iran has traveled a long distance since 1979. They're now anti-America, anti-Trump, to the point where they're calling for Trump's assassination. And they're extremely anti-Israel. Well, this is what Ezekiel 38 and 39 predicted would happen. Persia, once an ally of Israel, would become very belligerent in the last days, bellicose in the last days, anti-Western in the last days, anti-Israel in the last days. And I'm here to tell you, folks, that Iran is fitting into the identical prophetic orbit predicted by the prophet Ezekiel 2,600 years ago. So we're living in a time period where it looks as if the stage is being aggressively set for the end times scenario. We now have a lot of credible explanations in place as to why the United States won't help Israel during her time of need, albeit Ezekiel 38 and 39, and why and how Persia is becoming anti-Israel, anti-West. It has to do with the Islamic Revolution in Iran, 1979, and Iran's current trajectory from then to now, where their propaganda pieces are now calling openly for the assassination of the President of the United States. Who would have thought these things could happen so quickly and so aggressively? But we are the people that are living in the time period when these events are coming into very, very sharp focus. As we kind of wrap up our session for today, just a reminder of the things that we covered. There's some good things going on via the Restrainer. Tried to bring you up to speed on that. And yet the Gog-Magog alignment is being aggressively assembled as well. Let me make you aware of one infomercial if I could. It has to do with this coming Tuesday, April 15th. From 6:30 to 9:30 p.m. at the Waukesha Expo Center, Waukesha, Wisconsin. There's going to be a Worldview Radio Understanding the Times rally. There's going to be 3 speakers, Brandon House, Israeli on the ground, Aaron Lavarco, and myself, bringing you up to speed on the end times. You need to go to Brandon House's website there and sign up for this particular event. It's a free event. I'm going to be there along with 2 others, and we're going to have a great time teaching. I think each of us will be teaching for about 45 minutes, and it's just going to be a great environment to make us aware of the signs of the times. And beyond that, presenting the gospel of our Lord Jesus Christ, which is really the only solution to this sort of hopeless age that we find ourselves within. So with that being said, I will see you next time on Pastor's Point of View as we bring to you some more prophetic themes. God bless you, and we'll see you next time.